is Dick Marcinko, a.k.a. the Road Warrior. Listen to the 25th Hour with Rob and Randy.
The 25th Hour Radio Show.
Mr. Marcinko, let's go back to the beginning. What made you decide to enlist in the Navy in 1958?
Well, that was an easy one. The real reason was that I was born in '40, so I was around for when Johnny was marching home and the wars, World War II, and all of my uncles were in the Army or the Army Air Corps. There was nobody in the Navy. And I had an uncle that I kind of liked, and he was going to go to the Navy, but showed up as a diabetic, so couldn't go in. So being a curve breaker, I decided if nobody else is going to do it, I'll do it. And so Navy became my choice. In fact, if you look at the autobiography that came out in '92, there's a picture of me in a sailor suit. I think I'm 2 years old. And it was bought for me by my grandmother, the mother of the uncle that I liked. And I didn't like many of my uncles, but so anyway, that was really the background of how the Navy showed up. And when I enlisted in '58, we still had a draft, and so you either volunteered to join or you picked your number at 18, and you waited to get snapped up. So go back in history in '58, we were in Lebanon again. The Marines had a little tussle going, and I said, I think I want to go over and kick some ass. And what did I know? I was 17. So, it was better fighting in the streets of Jersey. But at any rate, I went to enlist in the Marine Corps, and I said, I want to go over and kick some ass. And they said, no, well, we can't guarantee that you'll get there in time because you have to go through boot camp and infantry training. And I said, whoops. So I'm not guaranteed going. In my mind, if you didn't do that, you're guarding the gate somewhere. And I was in New Jersey at the time, so all I could envision me is Lakehurst Air Station in New Jersey guarding the gate, and that didn't excite me at all. And that was '58, and about 1950 something, probably '54, there was a movie out in black and white called Frogmen with Richard Widmark, and that was when they were wearing the aqua lungs because they didn't have the rebreathers yet and all that. And I said, Dan, I could do one of that. And so that's basically one, to buck the curve and be the first one in the Navy, and two, to go kick some ass, and Frogmen seemed like the way to go.
Well, you enlisted as like a radio man, right?
Well, I enlisted. They decided that I had the natural something to be a radio man. When you go through basic training, they give you a battery of tests that's kind of supposed to tell them what you're natural for. And I can't believe that, because in those days of ribbing everybody, it was clickety clack, here come the girls from the Radio Shack. But today communication is completely different. But yeah, I was a radioman before I went to training for underwater demolition team, because we didn't have SEALs yet.
Well,
oh my God!
And when in your military career did you take more of a leadership or commanding position, or maybe more importantly, what were the steps you took to get to that position?
Well, I actually was underwater demolition. I actually went through underwater demolition training as an E3, and actually took my test and passed for E4 during Hell Week, which is the week they try to weed you out at a training. So I was an E4, but I went to the teams, and I guess I had a chief, an E7, that sort of was my sea daddy, and recognized that I didn't like to take orders very well, but maybe I could give some. But the Navy had a program that was called Integration Program, where they took 50 out of the fleet every year, enlisted, and sent them to OCS. That's organized chicken shit, by the way. And so that was on leadership. So it was basically being in the teams, and I guess I got I wasn't there long enough. See, I went through training in '60, so I went to OCS in '65. So it took me 5 years to realize I got tired of young officers coming in every year out of training and trying to tear my body apart because they thought that they knew a better way to do things. And I said, yeah, I've been doing this 4 times now, and it doesn't work that way. So it was the grinding.
Did you always feel that you were a natural leader, or was that something that the Navy?
No, I never really entered my mind. I mean, I often, way back when, I would equate it to, we had a draft, so I enlisted, and I volunteered. And when I got to the teams, it certainly, I said, I like this, and I was going to have a military career. And then I got a commission, and it wasn't a commission, it was an obsession, and that, I'm here to stay, and I'm going to make all I can out of it. So it was one of those, growth. It's much like a computer. It was a force multiplier of I hit this plateau, so let's go jumpstart and go to the next one, and success breeds success. And the advantage of being in the teams is that you're surrounded by talent. I mean, everybody's an egomaniac that just pushes the bubble. I mean, you're surrounded by alpha wolves, and they're going to push, and if you don't have the hated enemy, you push each other. It's like a large family where the brothers just ding on each other.
Was it overwhelming being a commander and having so much responsibility placed on you?
No, I was too busy trying to beat the system. I didn't. I don't think that ever. That didn't enter my mind. The responsibility. I would say if I go to combat and go to Vietnam, where I had tours, and then I went to Cambodia. Let's go to combat. I had the responsibility of bringing my troops home, hopefully in one piece. And the lack of leadership in my mind was our Congress didn't have the testicles to declare war, so I wasn't going to die out there. So I mean, that means that you have a focus on your missions, and I found out that taking the nastiest missions or going the hardest way was probably the safest, because they didn't expect gringo Americans to do it that way. So
you guys got so efficient. Didn't the Viet Cong even put a reward out on you guys' heads at one time?
Yeah, they missed. I'm still here.
Hey, knowing that you're the founder of the first commander of SEAL Team 6, how did you go about bringing the first team together and choosing the individuals to be a part of that team?
Oh, that's a trade secret. I'd have to kill you if I told you. Actually, it was I was fortunate in that that I got a commission and survived. But I had all that combat time. Then I had Cambodia was a diplomatic tour, so I was used to being around senior people. But my first staff tour was in the Pentagon. I missed all the echelons between there in terms of staffing. So I was there when terrorism or counterterrorism just started to focus. If you go back in history books, it was when the terrorists were kidnapping our people and hijacking airplanes and wanted to swap off some of the prisoners that we had in the United States. And it was then that a concept plan was drafted, and I happened to be the action officer for the Navy working on that. And then we had my second tour up the Pentagon was the debacle in Iran, where we failed the mission. This almighty nation with all of our toys, we couldn't get our people out of Iran, and so that stoked me a lot. But I certainly learned then a lot of the discrete ways that you can get special funding to build things, and I knew I had contacts now in D.C. in the different bureaus and certainly in the Navy staff as to how things function, so that when it came down to the failure of that raid, which is why, because a helicopter got fine sand in the filters that crashed into a C-130, and there we were out in Desert One, and it was a blown mission. So it was I don't like helicopters, but at any rate, there was a study after that. It was called the Admiral Holloway study, and they were retired admirals and generals that basically said we would no longer do counter-terrorist operations by committee, that there should be a standing force that worked together and trained to do that. And I was just getting ready to finish my tour in the Pentagon and drafted up the fact that there would be a SEAL. It started off as a SEAL element, and I changed it to SEAL command. Slip of the pen, and that was sold. And when I left there, the chief of naval operations asked me where I was going. I had orders to go to the National War College right there in Washington, and I'd already been to a war college and had my master's. And I said, well, I'd really like to go to command. And he says, well, you got it. Just don't fail. Well, with that license, the SEAL teams, SEAL Team 1 and SEAL Team 2, one being on the East Coast, on the West Coast, and 2 on the East Coast, had a small nucleus of people that were training for counter-terrorist operations, but didn't have the budget and didn't really have they were taking the dedicated forces out of their own command hide. So I picked them as a nucleus of the numbers I needed, and then personally interviewed, everybody I picked on both coasts, which, didn't make me loved by the rest of the community because I took pick of the litter. But for me to pick them, I fell back on my enlisted experience, and I actually, while I was still stationed in the Pentagon, went down to Virginia Beach to SEAL Team 2 and got some of my old enlisted teammates, and we sat around at night till wee hours going down who was available, who were good shooters, and made up basically our gear list, what we needed, what we thought we needed, and just given me something to staff with up in D.C. So, it was basically teammates that knew the reputation of other teammates that they know had proven themselves, and that gave me a list for the first initial draw.
Well, I don't want to get too much into detail on missions and stuff, but I would appreciate maybe you giving our listeners a brief history on Red Cell, what it was and why it was implemented, and maybe the results.
Well, Red Cell, actually, it was the concept of Admiral Ace Lyons, who ended up, in fact, he's a neighbor of mine, lives about 20 miles from here, and we still communicate. He retired a 4-star, and he's still cantankerous, and I still talk to him. I call him by his first name, Admiral. And but there was historically, the Navy already had a program called Red Flag, and that was out in California, and it was a squadron of aviators that flew Russian MiGs. And so before the squadrons deployed, they would go and fly against the Red Flag assets. So they would, in essence, get a taste of what the Russians' capabilities were and what they would have to go against. So Ace Lyons said, well, we need to get people thinking about terrorism. Let's call it something that they're used to. So that's how the name came, Red Cell. And I took a nucleus of people that I drafted. They all came from SEAL Team 6 that just needed a break or wanted to follow me and see what was going on, what this thing was going to be. And one Marine, our ex-Marine, was actually an ex-Marine that became a Navy submariner. And we would be tasked by a 4-star admiral to test facilities. And an example of, for the listeners, the Sink Land Fleet is there in Norfolk, Virginia, and it has another SAC line. So there are about 23 flag officers on the compound. And we went against that for about 9 days. And you just do probes of penetration to test the perimeter. And not only did I have my band of merry men, I also contracted a civilian firm that had ex-SEALs that got hurt, couldn't be SEALs anymore, that became cameramen for them, and they could anticipate where we would be going or could kind of keep up with us to actually put it on videotape, how we got in and what we did. And then another group of surveyors that did the analytics of the stats, the probability of success, and would it always work that way, or so that no one said, well, you got me on Thursday, but you couldn't get me on Tuesday. Those are little kid games. So anyway, if I just take that compound, the dirty trick. They're dirty tricks. One, we dressed like SEAL Team 6 in modified grooming standards, which meant we didn't wear uniforms, and we had at least European cut hair and facial hair. But we would go in and come through the gates or go over the walls, or if you've been in Norfolk, a lot of the bases have steam pipes that run overland, so you run the pipes over the fences. And in the command center, we'd break in down the basement and jimmy the elevator and get up inside the command center and disarm Marine guards and wait for the morning brief. Actually, you would a couple of my guys got in and set claymores where the admirals and generals come out after the morning brief. And when after they did their dirty deed, they stripped down the jogging gear and jogged out the front gate as just going to do PT. So what happened was when they, I did a dummy thing and pulled the fire alarm, and when they evacuated the building, all the flag officers stepped out and faced claymore mines. So when firing, and we'd have wiped out about 20-some flag officers, which of course was good for me. It made room at the top. But it was. I'd catch admirals in the gymnasium, and unless the admirals were an aviator that had been to SEER training, survival, escape, resistance, and evasion, they would naturally assume the leadership role and say, I am Admiral so-and-so, you can't do this to me. And I would harass them enough and play with them enough to tell them, we're terrorists, you don't identify who the hell you are. Because that's me, if they know you're the Admiral, then you just identified their prime target, and they know that they've got you by the proverbial.
Right.
So it was, so there was an academic side to it as a learning curve, and it demonstrated the vulnerabilities because we were just not prepared to face the things that we do. And I'll tell you frankly, I didn't play MacGyver with electronics or anything. I broke into bases and nuclear submarines with the skill capability of probably any second-story man in any big city. Only because we as Americans are, one, lazy, or two, we set up patterns because we don't like change, and three, if you have the mental focus and fortitude, you can blow your right past anybody. So it was that's just one compound. When Reagan was president, I got to Point Mugu where Air Force One landed, and was able to get a truckload of 500-pound bombs that we stole, and set it down, and it would have detonated, and we put a real charge on it, which would have rolled Air Force One like a pincushion down the runway. So we did things like anything for Chester molester and harass the child care center to taking over bowling alleys in Japan, and we went around the world and demonstrated the basic social functions that could be penetrated, and how you could, and with operators of less than 10 people. So it was easy. It's a lot easier being a bad guy than a good guy, because if I saw somebody that was alert, you say, let's go get a cold beer, we'll come back later. And if they're too, they stay in there ready, then you shift down to another base. But the beauty of the program was that a 4-star that owned the base, basically, or owned the bases, the theater commander would pick the sites he wanted tested. And I would go in and brief and say, hey, we're going to be here, and this is what we're going to do. And then we would do it. And then we put it on film so that they had a training film after we left that said, all right, here's how they came in, and here's what we need to shore up and fix. So it was a little embarrassing for the bases that we hit, but
And that was actually something I was going to ask you. Was it difficult orchestrating all this? So you guys actually sat down like a football team and just kind of went through this is the way I'm taking it. You just kind of observed what was going on, and like you said, people getting a routine of things, and just scoped it out.
We actually we did the intelligence work on what was the capabilities of the terrorists in that region, and then we would role play at their level of capability. We got to nuclear submarines in New London, Connecticut, without even putting diving gear on. We floated down with flotsam and jetsam, and just crates over our heads, and came up by the piers, and overtook the pier guards and got on board a nuclear submarine and put phony charges there. So
So none of these facilities were aware that you were coming. This was not a training. This was not a training type simulation. This was real.
Well, no, they were armed and they knew we were there. I mean, it was announced, and they knew what days we were going to be there. And I would report to either the senior officer present or the commanding officer of the base, the installation, once a day, what I'd done the night before or the day before, or what was going on now. And then normally as we left, they'd say, "Thank God they're gone." And I would leave some charges behind, and we'd fire a remote switch as we were taking off, just to keep them awake. But, it's sad, I guess, to say that they knew that we were there, and I gave a briefing. If we were going to start, what's today? Today's Wednesday. Well, if we were going to start on Saturday, Friday we'd have an all hands briefing in the theater, says we're there, just so that the dependents that live on the base, when they heard the sirens go in the middle of the night, know that there was an exercise going on, and not to get too panicky.
Did you ever have any? Was all those missions successful? I mean, what was every one of them?
We actually got so bad that we had to force ourselves to get caught, because we found out that there are layers of security, like almost any city. There are different levels of police protection, and roles that they have. So we let ourselves get caught because we would get inside the police command center, and we still have crotch pistols on, because people in the center would figure that whoever got us on perimeter had done a thorough search. So we had, and at that time, so that became kind of a learning curve where we call timeout. This is how you're supposed to frisk. This is what you're looking for, and so that for the security personnel, they loved it, in that they were being exposed to reality before reality shows were in, and saw the real problem that they could face, and not just some mythical. Because if you're not challenged, security is boring. They go out there and they talk to themselves, they read books, and on a nuclear site, you may find somebody out on perimeter up in a tower, which in a tower cuts down the field of fire, and only have 20 rounds. Well, if I'm frisky enough to move around a lot, you're going to spend your 20. Then what do? Climb out of the tower, run back to the head building, and say, "I need more bullets." Another thing with low light level cameras, and you look at anchor fence. If you have two layers of anchor fence, so you have an entrapment area, and then you have the inner compound. Well, unless those wires are perfectly lined up, which they're not. I mean, they just put a fence up. So it means that the opening squares get smaller and smaller, and if I don't move fast, which gives them a quick blur, I can almost stand up and walk through the fence line, and they won't catch me on a low light level TV camera. And if I'm playing with sensors on the ground, well, I just get an old fishing pole or a long bamboo pole with a windsock on it, and rattle it. And about the fourth time, the security's got to run out to gate area 64 through 66 to say, damn it, the sensors are screwed up. Just write it off. I'm tired of coming out here. And now you know that you've worn them out, and that you can just, they'll just read it as a false alarm. And if they have dogs, and your initial surveillance, you saw that they had dogs manning it, well, you got to beat that bitch you hate. You throw her over. And I tell you what, boys, they ain't worried about me coming over the fence. They're chasing that bitch you hate. So I mean, it's more common sense, and playing our vulnerabilities because of our societal trends that make it easy to penetrate.
Do you think that SEAL teams are different now than when they were first brought online?
Oh yeah, one they're smarter. Training's a lot longer. Now, people, that's a common question. Was training harder when you went through than it is now? And the natural response, my class was the hardest, damn it. You study by that. But in reality, underwater demolition team training, UDT replacement training was 16 weeks. So now they're 6 months. Well, it's not the duration of training that wears you. That's the difference. But now for 6 months, they're not real people. They're a stinking trainee. And in that 6 month period, if they get hurt, they roll back a segment of training until they get better, and then come back up. And I saw guys in my class and we only graduated 19 enlisted and 3 officers. So that was a slim pickings. But when people had been through a portion of training and got hurt, and when they got up to that same level again with another class, you can almost taste it in the air. And a lot of them quit just saying, I'm not going to do it again. It becomes a mental block. So it takes it out. So now take that from 16 weeks out to 6 months. That's a long time to have that monkey on your back. And today's SEALs, when they come out of that, they're 6 more months at an operational unit where they're on probation before they get the true number that they're a qualified SEAL.
Well, let's talk some current projects. You're an author with numerous bestsellers on the market, and for those that don't know out there, Mr. Marcinko was the first person to have his autobiography written and then turn around and have himself cast as himself, but also as a fictional character. When that idea was first brought to you, what was your immediate reaction?
I didn't know you could make that much money without getting shot at. It was a surprise. It was a surprise to the publishing business. It really became it's like anything else. Timing is with the wars. I mean, now we have wars all the time, but there was a big gap between World War II and Korea and Vietnam, and the little skirmishes like Cuba and stuff. But so if you make money fighting wars, it was slim pickings for a while. But like today, though, they're jumping everywhere and going everywhere. But in getting back to when you read the autobiography, they sent me to be a guest of the government, and I had to pay lawyers, and I had a choice of either selling my ass or a story, and I have two pocket pants, but only one pocket ass, so I had to sell the story. So they asked for it, not me. But it's still, it was one of those quirks in that one of my sea daddies told me way back when, just keep a log of what happened significant today. And I kept those things. And, just like your daily planner, any significant phone call that, I talked to somebody, that made writing the autobiography simple. And I just flipped right through those and said, gee, I forgot about that, but here it is right here. And so that was a training discipline that became a way of life to me. It's almost like you heard I was listening to Chris's tape, our show, and all those things that we do for a civilian, kind of seems like, wow, how did you do that? Well, when you do it every day, when it becomes a part of your life, it's just a natural thing. It's not a chore. It's just like just breathing. I mean, I still drive down a road street, and I'll look for antennas and, what is it? Why is that antenna over there? What kind of facility could be around here? Look at the shape of the road as to what size vehicle can move down. I mean, can you move nuclear supplies down here or can't you? And that's just inbred now because I did it for so many years. It's a natural thought process.
Well, I'm going to ask you something. How many books do you got out right now from yourself, from Richard Marcinko? How many? And I assume everything can be purchased on Amazon, right?
Yeah. Well, the 20th, where are we at? The 20th just hit the street. That's Blood Lies. The 21st is up at the publisher. And I just got into a piss-up today with the publisher on the next one. So I'm not sure if it may be a different publisher for the 22nd. So it averages, if you start in 92, that's there's 3 leadership, 1 autobiography, and the rest are the fiction or prediction novels.
What about your website, dickmarcinko.com? What can people expect by visiting that site, and what kind of intel can they absorb there?
Well, that's more, that is really run it's run by the fans, and that they generate, what they want to talk about, and I jump in there and respond and answer it. And once a year we get together and have a 4-day blowout called a muster, where I get to answer the same questions 14 times. But they're kind of thinking people that are patriots and concerned, and some people are know more about guns than others, and probably close to 40% are women. Surprisingly, the fan base on the books is at least 28% women, and of all ages. It really started. It started with the older women, and probably Red Cell, the second book. And my take on that was John Wayne was dead, and so was her husband, and I still talk like their husband and John Wayne did. And the rest of the world has started to go politically correct and afraid to say anything.
What's your take on political correctness?
I think it sucks. Do we understand that?
I think America is tired of that. What do you think?
Well, I mean, let's communicate. I mean, don't. Are you a short shit or are you vertically challenged? But
Short shit.
what is vertically? What does that mean? Challenged. What does it mean? I'm being challenged. Is it my personality or no? You're short shit. Next. I mean, look at Reagan, the great communicator when he was president. I mean, I was up there stationed at Pentagon for a couple things that went to him, and in my mind, I'm convinced that when he read a military mission order that came in for decisions, I think he saw himself as a leading role, and just his training, and evaluated, how he would do it and what would be best. So you can't. Life is too short. Life is now too complicated with all that's going on to mince words. I mean, I don't need you to ponder what I said. Do you know what I mean? This is what I mean. So, and as all the kids that I've raised, I have an 11-year-old and an almost 15-year-old here on the compound. When Daddy uses those 4-letter descriptive adjectives, that means it's no longer a democratic discussion. It's over.
Right on.
I know you mentioned your book, but is there anything coming up in the immediate future concerning Dick Marcinko that the public should be aware of?
Well, I do Rogue Warrior Fighting Championships now, too, and those are MMA fights that are licensed under the IFC, which is older than the UFC, but doesn't make as much money. And it's with active duty fighters, and we just had out in Lawton over Veterans Day, our first 2 female fighters doing MMA, and we try to pitch, if it works out right, in weight class, Navy against Marine, or so you get service competition plus just good fights, and so they are either active duty or they are ex. and they're licensed to the IFC, and some are dual-handed with the UFC. But part of the gate goes to support the nonprofit Stars and Stripes Foundation, which is for the wounded vets. So we try to get probably about 6 a year under our belt, and we move around the country, and it appears that any championship or finality groups will be out in Vegas because the town is good for it, and it's just easier to set things up and do it there.
Well, Mr. Marcinko, on behalf of Randy and I, we'd like to once again say thank you for being on our show, and good luck surviving the impending Mayan apocalypse.
Well, I'll be a survivor because I promised everybody I was going to live to be 100 so I could piss off that many more people.
Well, if anyone could survive, it would be you.
You know, when you got youngsters, you got to stick around and pay the bills.
Well, I got my bug out bag ready.
Yeah. Well, I was out here in the woods.
You got there in the woods, huh?
Yeah, I got me a pond, got a lot of critters in it, and they're tasty. And I got deer, and I got black bear, and I got fox, and I got wild turkey, and I got rabbit, and I got squirrels. So y'all come down, because I ain't going to starve that.
Hey, we might. You just offered it, and everybody heard that offer.
I like me some rabbit.
Oh, y'all taste like chicken. Well, thanks for having me on, guys, and to the listeners, enjoy, and hope you have a great holiday, and buckle up, because I think we're going to see a lot of rocking and rolling around the world if it's not in their own government.